high but not an absolute assurance. All right. Okay. So next meeting that we had, di ba? We also discussed about the types of audits and the types of auditors. So tatlo yung audits na meron tayo, no? FS audit, compliance audit, operational audit. Then we also have the three types of auditors: external auditor, government auditor, internal auditor. Then we also discuss as well the need for financial statement audit, kung saan ano yung mga reason. Ano yung mga reasons, why do we need financial statement audit. Then we also discuss as well the theoretical framework of auditing. During our third meeting, we discussed the professional standards, the part one of professional standards, where we focused on the GAAS, or the Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. Can you still see my screen, class?
Yes po.
Yes po.
All right.
Yes po.
Okay, thank you. So, may three clusters yan, no? Yung GAAS, General Standards, Standards of Fieldwork, and then Standards of Reporting. So, mnemonics for General Standards, TEEP. So, yun lang isipin nyo, alam nyo na yung pinaka-breakdown ng General Standards. Then, for Fieldwork, PI, and then for Reporting, GIDO. Then, for our fourth meeting, we discuss about the second part of the professional standards, which are other standards that we need in the conduct of our audit. So the last time, yung diniscuss lang natin, yung una pala, the first part, we focus here, generally accepted auditing standards. Pero meron pa pala tayong dapat ibang malaman. Meron pa palang Philippine Standards on Auditing, Philippine Standards on Quality Control, Philippine Standards on Review Engagement, Assurance Engagement, Related Services, Philippine Auditing Practice Notes, saka AASC Alert. So, we all know na yung Philippine Standards on Quality Control, it is now called Philippine Standards on Quality Management. So, yan na, bago na siya, no? Hindi na siya Philippine Standards on Quality Control. Kababago lang niya this 2021. Philippine Standards on Quality Management na siya. Tapos pinag-aralan din natin last time yung PSQC number 1 or PSQM number 1, kung saan diniscuss natin yung systems of quality control or systems of quality management. So, nilay down natin lahat ng elements of having a good quality control or good quality management. So, yan, na-discuss na natin to. So, once I uploaded our video, you can rewatch it. So, para mas madali natin maalala lahat-lahat. Okay. All right. Then, we will discuss today the auditor's responsibility. So, after discussing the auditor's responsibility, magkakaroon tayo ng short quiz, online quiz regarding Chapter 1 to Chapter 3. Kasi yung auditor's responsibility is Chapter 3 na natin sa libro. Alright. So, dito muna tayo. Focus muna tayo dito sa discussion with auditor's responsibility. So, ano ba yung main responsibility ng isang auditor? So, anyone from the class, what is the main responsibility of an auditor? Anyone from the class, what is main responsibility? Ano ba yung responsibility ng auditor? Yes, Gabriel.
Sir, the main responsibility of an auditor is to like express an opinion for if like the financial statements are fairly presented. The
Yeah.
information in the financial statements are fairly presented.
Yes, that's correct, no? So tama yung sinabi ni Gab na the main responsibility of an auditor is to express an opinion or to provide a reasonable assurance. 'Di ba opinion? Ano bang binibigyan na opinion ng auditor? Reasonable assurance dapat, no? It is in the form of an audit opinion. So yun po yung gustong sabihin ni Gab. Tapos saan niya ine-express yun? Ine-express niya yon sa expression of opinion saan? In the financial statements. So, ine-express pala niya yon sa financial statement. So tulad ng dinidiscuss natin during the past meetings, saan siya nag-express? On the fairness of the financial statement. So kaya nga sinasabi lang ni auditor, the financial statements are fairly presented, di ba? Are fairly presented. So ibig sabihin, hindi niya sinasabi the financial statements are perfect, 100% accurate. So never nagsasabi ng gano'n ang auditor kasi hindi hindi ibig sabihin na walang error. Diba? Hindi lang nakita ni auditor yung error. Or sabihin natin, free nga siya from error, wala talagang error yung FS na yon, okay siya. Pero hindi tayo pwedeng magbigay ng absolute assurance. We can only give a reasonable assurance or high but not absolute assurance. That's why we never say an FS is perfect, an FS is accurate. All right. So, yan yung pinaka-main purpose or responsibility ng auditor to provide a reasonable assurance. When we say reasonable assurance, yun nga po, di ba? Sinasabi natin, okay ba yung financial statements from the point of view of financial auditor? So, kaya reasonable assurance siya kasi we are not so sure. Di ba? We are not sure if there are misstatements. So, we are not sure if there are misstatements. Ano ba yung mga misstatements? Anyone from the class, what is misstatement? Ano yung misstatement? Class, can you still hear me?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po, sir.
Dapat yung misstatement, alam nyo to kasi accountants kayo, accounting students kayo, alam na alam nyo dapat yan. So what is misstatement? Yes, anyone from the class? Sige, si Gab ulit.
Try lang po, sir. So, as far as I know, so pag sinabi, sir, misstatement, parang magkaiba siya. Yung information dun sa actual financial statement is hindi siya in line with the applicable accounting standards, sir. Kaya po may tinatawag tayong misstatement. Hindi siya fairly presented.
Okay, so yun yung sinabi ni Gab, no? So different from the should be. Sabihin natin, from the should be accounting policy or accounting standards, di ba? Accounting standards. So lagay na lang natin, accounting standards or not fairly presented. So not fairly presented daw. Bakit? Kasi dapat ito yung presentation using this applicable financial reporting standard, pero dahil iba yung ginamit, it could be it could lead to a misstated financial statement. So tama naman. Tama yung sinabi ni Gabriel, 'di ba? How about, sige, hingi pa tayo ng ibang opinion from Luella. Sige po, yes.
Ano po sir, kapag nagkakaroon din po tayo ng misstatements if may mga error po dun sa financial statements po. For example, iba po yung ano po nung number. For example, 6 dapat naging 9 po, ganun po sir.
Alright, so tama yun, no? Because of errors, di ba? Errors brought forward to the financial statements. Siyempre, tayo, mga tao lang tayo. So, siyempre, kung tao lang tayo, subject to human error. Dahil may human weakness tayo, napapagod, di ba? Halimbawa, accountants na tayo. Kung accountants tayo, maraming pinapagawa sa atin. Pagpasok nating office, paki-check mo tong paki-check mo yung record ng mga employees, yung DTR, di ba? Aside from being an accountant, gagawin din natin yung HR function, admin function, payroll function. Diba? So, pagdating mo, sabihin sa'yo ng boss mo, paki-check mo nga yung DTR nung mga employees natin. After nun, paki-check mo nga, pakibilang mo yung supplies. After nun, paki-check mo yung asset kung okay pa ba. Mag-fix asset count ka, mag-inventory count ka. So, lahat na lang pinagawa sa'yo. So, at the end of the day, kapag gumawa ka na ng financial statement kasi yun na lang yung time mo. Hapon ka na lang gagawa ng journal, ledger, financial statements. So syempre pagod ka na. So subject to human weakness, so pwedeng magkaroon ng error, 'di Diba? So these errors can be brought forward up to the financial statement level. So pwedeng makita yun doon. So tama si Luella. Tama din si Gab. Diba? So pwede yun. So another one. Ano pa kaya? Yung mga, yes, Jean.
Siguro sir kapag ano po, kapag nakikita ng isang auditor o nase-sense niya na may fraud po sa isang financial statement na ino-audit niya. Like for example po, katulad po sa example niyo nung nakaraan na yung sales po ng isang company hindi gano'n kalaki tapos nung second year po nila parang sobrang laki na ng sales. So dun pa lang nakikita mo na sobrang laki ng difference. May material misstatements na nangyari doon. So mase-sense ng isang auditor na nagkaroon ng isang fraudulent act. And kapag fraudulent po kasi ang pinagkaiba niya sa error, kapag fraud po, ano siya, intentional siya. So sinadya siya. So it could be yung financial statement ng isang company nagkaroon ng window dressing po ng financial statement para masabing maganda pag present po sa investor.
Wow, that's perfect, no, Jean? So si Jean may kinompleto niya na yung discussion ng fraud. So which is also correct. So tama siya. Napaka-accurate. So misstatement may also came from fraud, no? So tama yon. It could arise from error. It could arise from fraud. It could arise from a misapplication of an accounting standard. It could arise from another source. So, ayun, hindi muna natin i-discuss kasi i-discuss ko na siya. Alright, pero thank you for that, no? So, ang gagaling, napaka-engaging ng ating discussion. So, before I discuss the sources of misstatements, I would like to discuss as well na yung misstatement kasi is dalawang klase. 'Di ba? Yung misstatement, pwede siyang maging material. Diba? Material misstatement. Diba? Misstatements can be material or immaterial. So when we say material misstatement, ano po yung ibig sabihin? No? When we say material misstatement, what do we mean by material misstatement? Yes, Erica.
Yung misstatement po nagiging material kapag po nakakaapekto na po yung yung error po na yun sa magiging economic decision po ng user.
Yes, that's correct, no? So pag sinabing material ang isang misstatement, that means to say it can significantly impact the decision of the stakeholders or users of the financial information. So syempre kung mali ang nailagay sa report, sa financial report, tapos nagkamali rin ng decision yung mga stakeholders o kaya yung investors o kaya yung mga stockholders or any other users of the financial information, doon natin masasabi na material yung misstatement, di ba? If we are accountant. Pero kung tayo ay auditor, hindi natin dapat ipaabot doon sa dulo na magde-decide na sila. Kailangan, habang ino-audit pa lang natin, masasabi na natin na this misstatement is material or this statement is immaterial. So, anyone from the class, ano naman yung immaterial misstatement? Anyone from the class, what is immaterial misstatement naman? Can you still hear me?
Yes po, sir.
Alright. So ano kaya yung immaterial misstatement? Kasi yung material na discuss na natin. So yung immaterial naman, halimbawa hindi ko alam yung immaterial eh. So what's immaterial? Yes po. Sorry. Yes, Jan Luis.
So yung mga mga immaterial na misstatement. Ito po yung mga non-significant na misstatement na re-result po sa mula sa mga error. Hindi po siya para po sa akin, if insight ko lang po, hindi po siya nag-arise from fraudulent acts kasi if hindi naman po mandadayang isang company o immaterial naman po yung gagawin nila.
Yes, no? So may point si John Lewis doon, no? Pag sinabing immaterial, these are misstatements that doesn't have any significant impact sa financial statement. So, hindi siya makakaapekto sa uh, decision, economic decision ng mga stakeholders. However, it may not fully represent the fairness of the financial statements as a whole, di ba? Kasi may error may existence of error. And alam ng auditor na may error, pero hindi niya ginawa ng paraan. Kasi sabi niya, immaterial naman so okay lang. So hindi niya pwedeng sabihin na fairly presented yung financial statement kasi aware siya doon sa error. Unless na lang, napaka-conservative niya. Ang sabi niya, yes, may error yan dyan. Hindi ko lang makita yung mga error na yon. Kasi ginawa ko na lahat. In-exhaust ko na lahat ng strategy ko to detect the error. Pero, it's really hard for me to find this type of error. So, I'm sure there is an error, pero I can't locate it. So, therefore, I can still render that the financial statement still fairly presented. Kasi na-exhaust niya na lahat ng means niya to detect the error. So, yun yung difference between being a material misstatement or an immaterial misstatement. Now, so let's discuss now the sources of misstatement. So, saan nanggagaling yung misstatement? So, ito naman misstatement to as a general. It's not material. We're not talking for being material misstatement or immaterial misstatement. So, we are discussing about the misstatement as a whole, no? So, saan nanggagaling ang mga misstatements pala? So, first one, nanggagaling siya saan? Sa errors. So, nanggagaling siya sa error. So, what do we mean by error? Anyone from the class? Yes, Shelly. What is an error?
Sir, naririnig po ako?
Yes po.
So, yung error naman po, it refers to unintentional misstatements in the financial statements. So, dito po, hindi po sinasadya na magkamali. For example po, yung mga mathematical or clerical mistakes. So, sa pagre-record po kasi, di ba minsan, pwede pong nagmamadali or nalito, nagkakaroon po ng transpositional pagdating po sa mga numbers. For example, dapat 525,000 yung record, tapos po ang nangyari, 552,000 yung na-record po.
Yes, that's correct. No? So tama si Shelly doon. Pag sinabi nating error, it is unintentional. So unintentional daw ang error. Kasi kapag sinadya mo ang error, intentional na yon, it will not be considered as error. Error lang na basta-basta. 'Di ba? So, itong mga errors na to, it could arise from small acts up to big acts. No? So, ano-ano yung mga example ng errors? Ano-ano kaya mga example ng errors? Anyone from the class? Anyone from the class? Ano kaya mga example ng errors? Yes, John Harold.
Ano po sir, yung isa pong example ng errors ay pwede siya magkaroon ng errors dun sa pag-compute or tinatawag din natin itong mathematical mistakes po. Kunyari po dun sa pagbabalance ng financial statements ay hindi mag-balance yung totals.
Yes, that's correct. No? So tama si John Harold doon. So that is what we call mathematical or clerical errors. So mathematical or clerical mistakes. No? So syempre, di ba tulad ng sinabi natin kanina, because preparation of financial statement still has human intervention. Kahit sabihin natin naka-accounting software sila, it still has an intervention of a human, which is what we call accountants, di ba? So, yung mga accountants na yan, napapagod din, di ba? So, subject pa rin yan to human error, to human weakness. So, possible na merong mathematical or clerical errors or mistakes. So, these are considered as error kasi hindi siya sinasadya, di ba? Unless na lang sadyain yung error talaga. So, syempre, dahil napapagod yung tao, understandable na pwede magkamali. No? That is considered as error. Yes, Gab.
Sir, another error po is yung sinabi kanina, which is yung error of transposition po, yung pagpapalit ng digits, like for example yung given kanina yung 525 nagiging 552. So transposition error po yung tawag doon.
Yes, that's correct. No? So, ano yun? Dalawang klase yun, di ba? Transpositional error. Saka ano pa yung isa? Dalawa yun. Transpositional, saka
Translocation po.
Translocation error, di ba? So, pag sinabi nating transpositional error, ito yung na pagpapalit mo yung dalawang numbers. Tama po ba? Kasi natatranspose mo eh. When we say transpose, so napagpalit mo. So halimbawa, 579. Napagpalit mo yung 7 saka 5, naging 759. Diba? So translocation naman, ito yung nagkulang. So from 1 million, imbes na 1 million pesos yung nailagay mo, 100,000 lang kasi nagkulang ng 0. So ayan. So these are types of errors. Mathematical or clerical error. Ano pa kaya mga ibang klase ng error that we have based on the audit of financial statements? So anyone from the class? Yes, Nicole. Nicole Ann.
Misinterpretation of facts.
Misinterpretation of
Facts po.
yes, no? So tama po 'yun. Misinterpretation of facts. So pwede natin ma-consider 'yon as subject to possible error, no? So misinterpretation of facts. Ayan. So lagyan natin ng kulay. Misinterpretation of facts. Like for example, sabihin natin may na-receive siyang source document. So, na-receive niya yung source document, Meralco bill. Nakasulat 5,000 pesos. So, nung na-receive niya yung Meralco bill, yan, lagyan natin dito, e.g. Meralco bill. Kano yung amount? 2,000 na lang, 2,000 pesos. Na-receive niya. So, the accountant records the transaction as already paid, di ba? As already paid. So anong entry niya nung ni-record niya as already paid na? So debit, utilities expense or electricity expense, then credit, cash. Kasi akala niya paid na. Pero ang na-receive pa lang niya is Meralco bill. So supposedly dapat nag-record lang muna siya ng accrual ng utilities expense or electricity expense, 2,000 pesos, and then credit accounts payable, 2,000 pesos. So it could be, the transaction has been misinterpreted by the accountant or accounting staff. So normally, di ba mga accounting staff yung nakaka-misinterpret for a specific transaction. So tama po yun. So another one, ano pa kaya? Yung mga nakikita natin. Normally. Yes, Gab. Yes, Gab.
Sir, duplication error po. Like, for example, merong more than one accountant sa isang business, and then may access sila parehas sa accounting system, then nagkaroon ng miscommunication na na-record na pala ng isang accountant yung isang transaction, and hindi alam ng isang accountant. So na-record niya ulit, so na-double po, na-duplicate.
Yes, no? So normal 'yan na nagiging error, lalo na kapag manual ang pag-create ng financial statement. So nagkakaroon ng duplication error. Kung saan na-record na siya ng isang accountant, pero ini-record mo ulit kasi akala nung accountant na yon ay hindi pa na-record. So siguro itong mga year 1980s and year 1990s, merong frequent commission ng mga ganyang error. Kasi nung time na yon hindi pa masyado uso yung accounting software. So manual lahat. So may nagkwento sa akin no na nakatrabaho ko sa ah, isang firm, sa isang company. Sabi niya sa akin nung bata pa sila, kasi matanda na siya magre-retire na siya noon, nung time na yon. Kwento niya sa akin nung bata pa daw sila, nung kagagraduate pa lang nila, ang dami daw nilang accountant sa isang ah, company, isang corporation. As in mga 30 to 50 accountants. Kasi maraming accountants nag-handle ng general ledger, maraming accountants nag-handle ng accounts payable. Yung accounts payable nun, hiwalay pa, trade and non-trade. Tapos iba yung nag-handle ng capital assets, iba naman nagre-record for revenues, expenses. So yung mga cost accountants naman for expenses. So marami yon. So syempre dahil iba-iba yung nagre-record, kanya-kanya. No? So kino-consolidate lang yun ng chief accountant before. So kapag kinonsolidate siya ng chief accountant, it could be, there could be an error. Diba? Kasi syempre hindi naman aware yung accountant na merong error na nangyari before doon during the recording of transactions. No? So that one, may possibility na ma-record ng duplicate. Parang nagkaroon ng duplicate recording of a particular transaction. So, yan, uso yan noon, yung mga duplicate error. Ngayon na nauulit din yan or nako-commit din yan kapag manual yung preparation ng financial statements. However, due to the advancing technology that we have, di ba meron na tayong mga accounting softwares. Ano kaya yung mga accounting softwares na aware kayo, class? Yes, Christine. Yes, Christine. Ano yung mga...
QuickBooks, sir.
QuickBooks, yes. Ano pa kaya yung iba? Yes, Shinali.
Zero po, sir.
Zero, di ba? Zero.
MYOB po.
MYOB. Yes, no? Tapos meron pa yung yung mga pang big companies, SAP. So, these accounting softwares, nilalagay kasi natin doon yung mga reference number. Sabihin natin, reference number ng invoice. Di ba? Invoice number. Kapag tinype mo yon, tapos na i-type ulit ng isang accountant, mag-a-appear doon na this invoice has already been recorded. So, mape-prevent yung duplication error. So, nagigets po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po.
Pero, possible pa rin yun na magkaroon ng error. Alright. So, wait for a moment, class. Alright, class. So, yeah. So, uso pa rin ngayon yon for manually created financial statements. So, meron pa rin na nakaka-commit ng duplication error. Ano pa kaya mga ibang klase ng errors? Anyone from the class? Ano pa kaya mga ibang klase? Yes, Jean May.
Sir, kapag meron pong mistakes in the application of accounting policies, like for example po sa investment property, di ba po nire-record natin ng investment property, initial measurement sa cost po. So sa subsequent measurement, yung accounting policies, pwede natin siya i-record, pwedeng fair value or cost model. So let's say ang ni-record po ng company, cost model, pero papalitan na daw dapat po nila next year ng fair value. Pero ang nakalagay sa financial statement po, cost model pa rin po.
Yes, no? So that's correct, no? That is considered as an error. Yung mistakes in the application of accounting policies. So we have PAS 8, diba? PAS 8 is the accounting standards for accounting policy. So when we say accounting policy, ano kaya yun? Anyone from the class, what is an accounting policy? So, kung naaalala po ba, di ba tapos na tayo sa Financial Accounting Part 1, 2, and 3, napag-usapan yun doon, napag-aralan natin yung PAS 8. So, what is an accounting policy? Anyone from the class? Yes, Shinali.
Sir, ito po yung mga specific principles or mga basis na ginagamit for the presentation or preparation of financial statements po.
Yes, no? So that are specific principles, guidelines, policies in the preparation of financial statements or a particular line item in the financial statement. So tulad ng sinabi kanina ni Jean May, yung sa investment property, you can use cost or fair valuation model, 'di ba? So syempre from a cost papunta sa fair valuation model pwede naman. However, syempre there are specific transactions or specific items na hindi allowed ang fair valuation model, kundi cost lang. Halimbawa, sa mga large corporation, pwedeng gamitin either cost or fair valuation model. Pero kung ikaw ay nasa isang non-government agency or cooperative organization, tapos meron kayong mga investment property, you cannot use fair valuation model kasi wala naman kayong pagbabanggaan doon na retained earnings o kaya other comprehensive income kasi hindi naman yung ginagamit ng mga cooperative organization. So, cost model lang sila. Alright, so ganun. So, and another one, if you are using a PFRS for small entities, so mas applicable yung cost model kaysa sa fair valuation model sa investment property. So, syempre, kung small entity ka, tapos you apply fair valuation, applying past for fair valuation ng investment property. So, you can, you're deviating from the use of PFRS for small entities. Kasi hindi naman applicable yung full PFRS sa iyo dahil small entity ka. So, yun yung parang mistakes in the application of accounting policies. No? So, pwedeng mag-result yon into error. Or yes, there is an error. Kasi nga, there is a misapplication of accounting policy. So, that's correct. So, tama si Shinaline, tama si Jean May. Ano pa po kayang ibang klase ng errors that we have? We can encounter during the audit of financial statement. So, anyone from the class? Anyone from the class? Can you still hear me? Yes, Luella.
Ano po sir, mga prior period errors po.
Yes, no? So prior period error. So minsan ang prior period errors na 'yon, these are financial statement errors, no? So we can say na itong prior period errors na to na-discover lang in the subsequent years, no? So prior period error. So lagay natin dito, prior period errors. Sama na rin natin yung balance sheet errors, income statement errors, counterbalancing errors, and non-counterbalancing errors. So these are FS errors that can be shown in the financial statements, in the face of the financial statement. So, syempre, yung prior period errors na yan, magkakaroon ng adjustment yan kapag na-discover. Diba? Halimbawa, na-issue na yung financial statement. Dahil issued na yung financial statement, you cannot correct it unless the auditor or the accountant will restate the financial statement. So that is a prior period error pertaining to errors in the prior period. Meron din mga errors, current period errors. Ito yung mga balance sheet errors, income statement errors, on which there are two types, diba? Counterbalancing and non-counterbalancing errors. So, pag-aaralan din natin to sa ating auditing problem, yung mga errors na yan, and how to correct these errors. Alright. So, ano pa kaya may ibang example ng errors? Meron pa po ba? So, we have mistakes in the application of accounting policies. Of course, we have incorrect accounting estimates. So, ano yung mga example ng incorrect accounting estimates? Sa contingent liabilities, di ba? Sa contingent liabilities, pag sinabing contingent, wala pang specific amount, di ba? Either pwedeng magbigay ng highest amount, pwedeng magbigay ng lowest amount. So, ang gagawin ng accountants, pwedeng i-average, di ba? So pwedeng magkamali doon yung accountant sa paglalagay ng contingent amount for liabilities. So, syempre may specific ruling din doon sa contingent liability is that remote contingent liability, possible, o kaya ano na talaga siya, certain na talaga yung contingent liability na yun. So, depende yon, di ba? Hanapin pa natin yon according sa uh, contingent liabilities, warranties, and provisions na accounting standards. As well as sa depreciation methods, di ba? Sa depreciation methods, pwedeng magkamali for regarding the accounting estimate, kung paano i-estimate yung depreciation. Ano ba yung mga example ng depreciation methods kung natatandaan natin? Anyone, class? Yes, Carlos. Yes, Carlos.
Double declining po.
Yes, double declining. Ano pa kaya yung iba? Double declining balance? Yes. Yes, Jofe.
Sum of the digit method po.
Sum of the year's digit. So, tama din, no? So, tama si Carlos. Double declining. Si Jofe. Sum of the year's digit. Yes, Princess.
Straight line method po.
Straight line method. So, tama din si Princess. Meron pa po ba kaya tayong ibang alam na method? Depreciation method? Anyone from the class? Yes, Luella.
150% ano yung ano po, depreciation method po yata. Basta
Yes.
150%.
Declining balance. So, that is 150% declining balance method. So, that's correct, no? So, tama po yun. Meron din tayong tinatawag na component depreciation saka composite depreciation. So, ito yung mga klase ng depreciation methods. So, these depreciation methods are accounting estimates only. So, kapag nag-change ka from one depreciation method to another depreciation method, that is a change in accounting estimate. No? Only change in accounting estimate yan. Hindi yan change in accounting policy. Nagigets po ba, class? Nakukuha po ba? Napapakinggan pa po ba ako? If you can still hear me, please press number 1. Alright. So, please press number 1 if you still can hear me. Alright. So, ayan. Okay. So, may nakikita naman ako. Ayan. So, mabilis naman. Alright. So, mabilis. Okay. Alright. So, pag nagkaroon ng change from one depreciation method to another depreciation method, it is considered as a change in accounting estimate, not a change in accounting policy. Bakit? Kasi depreciation method itself is an accounting estimate. Diba? Ine-estimate natin yung useful life, ine-estimate natin yung salvage value. We're not so sure magkano talaga yung salvage value niya at the end of its economic life, di ba? Kasi useful life nga lang ginagamit natin, not the economic life of the asset. So, yung pati useful life, ine-estimate lang natin, di ba? Kasi nag-group depreciation tayo for straight line method na lahat ng computers, 5 years lang yung depreciation niya, di ba? So, mag-estimate na lang 10% of the purchase cost, yun yung kanyang salvage value. So, lahat yun accounting estimate. Diba? So, syempre, pwede magkamali sa pag-estimate ng depreciation. Ano pa yung mga example ng accounting estimate, class? Receivables for allowance for bad debts. Diba? Kapag nag-estimate tayo ng allowance for bad debts at the end of the year, pwedeng magkamali ang accountant. Pwedeng magkamali ang business, ang management to estimate the bad debts. Kasi ang basis nila, it could be sales, di ba? Gross sales, sales, net sales, credit sales, net credit sales, accounts receivable, aging of receivables. Doon sila nagbe-base to compute for allowance for bad debts. So, syempre, these are only estimates. Pwede sila magkamali. So, these are example of errors. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes,
Yes
po.
po, sir.
Yes,
So, ulitin natin. If error, ang pinag-uusapan natin, unintentional yon. So, ano yung another term ng error? Kapag hindi natin mahanap yung error, ano kaya yung hahanapin natin? Sa exam, sabihin natin, ay walang error dito, error yung sagot dyan eh. Error yung, pag binasa ko yung example ng question, ang sagot dyan error, pero bakit walang error sa sa question, sa sa answers. So anong hahanapin nyo or ano yung alternative name ng error? So anyone? Error is also known as omission. No? Error is also known as omission or mistakes. Yan. So mistakes din ang alternative name ng error. Nagigets po ba? Nakukuha po ba, class?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po.
Yes po, sir.
So, kapag hindi makita ang error, hanapin nyo omission. Pag walang omission, makita nyo mistakes. So, these are alternative names for errors. Now, next one. Ano yung pangalawang source ng misstatement sa financial statement? Anyone from the class? Yes, Nico.
Fraud po.
Yes, fraud, no? So, una na pag-usapan na natin yung error. Now, ano naman yung fraud? Anyone from the class? Ano yung fraud kaya? Yes, John Harold.
Yung fraud po is yung kung yung error po ay ano nga yan? Unintentional. Yung fraud po ay intentional naman po siya na act ng isang yung gumagawa ng financial statements. Kunyari po, yung paggawa niya ng fraudulent acts to manipulate yung financial statements po.
Yes, no? So tama si John Harold doon. Ang error, unintentional. Ang fraud, intentional. So intentional pala kapag fraud. So pag ang error na-commit, that is considered unintentional. Pwede pang patawarin. Pero kapag fraud, ibig sabihin intentional, sinasadya na siya. So, yun yung classification pala para masabing fraud. So, ano yung mga examples ng fraud? But before we discuss what are the examples of fraud, let us dissect or break down the types of fraud. Ano yung mga types of fraud? Dalawang klase yon. Ano yung una? We have, ano kaya yung unang type ng fraud? Yes, Sophia. Ano kaya yung types ng fraud?
Sir, yung una po is yung fraudulent financial reporting.
Yes, no? Fraudulent. The first one is fraudulent financial reporting. So fraudulent financial reporting is also known as management fraud. So ayun po yung pinaka-first na uri ng fraud according to classification. So pag sinabi nating fraudulent financial reporting, alternative name niya is management fraud. So ano na yung mga example ng management fraud or fraudulent financial reporting? So anyone from the class, ano kaya yung mga example ng fraudulent financial reporting? Yes, Jean May. Yes, Jean May. Ano yung isang example ng fraudulent FS? Fraudulent financial.
Kapag meron pong manipulation po sa financial statement, example nga po niya yung window dressing po. Yung mga income po nila in overstate, tas yung mga expenses po in underestimate.
Yes, no? So that's correct. So manipulation, falsification, and alteration of record. So one example nun is window dressing. So window dressing of financial statement. So yung FS mismo yung window dress. Meron pa kasi ibang klase ng window dressing pero hindi FS yung window dressing. So this one, yung financial statement yung window dressing. So pag manipulation, falsification, saka alteration, kung mababasa nyo siya, merong existence ng fraud doon kasi parang intentional, di ba? When we manipulate something, di ba parang intentional yon? Kasi kaya nga natin minamanipulate kasi yun yung purpose natin, i-manipulate. And then, falsify, para ma-falsify talaga to look like it's the real one. So, intentional yon. So, this is an example of a fraud act, no? Fraudulent act. So, manipulation, falsification, alteration of records, that is one example of fraud, management fraud, or fraudulent financial reporting. Ano pa yung ibang klase ng, or ibang example ng fraudulent financial reporting? Anyone? Yes, Erica.
Recording of transactions without substance po. Halimbawa po yung yung company po ni-record na po niya agad yung revenue hindi pa po na-ship yung goods sa buyer.
Yes, that's correct, no? So, recording of transactions without substance. So, nilagay ko dito, dinugtungan ko para ma-emphasize natin. Recording of transactions without economic substance. That means to say, hindi pa siya recordable from the point of view ng accounting. Kasi yun yung ating sinusunod nga, di ba? We have a accounting assumption. We have an accounting assumption called substance over form. So, lagay natin dito. Ayan. Yan. So, we have an accounting assumption called substance over form. Kung saan, sinusunod natin yung economic substance ng isang transaction rather than its legal form. So, one example, tulad ng sinabi kanina ni Erica, diba? So, tama, na nagre-record yung company ng revenue kahit hindi pa na-deliver yung goods. Diba? So, ano ba yung dapat pag na-record yung revenue? Kailangan na-ship na yung goods. Kasi yung risk and rewards matatransfer na doon sa buyer. Kung hindi mo shinip, that means to say, hindi pa natatransfer yung risk and rewards. So, applying the substance over form, wala pang economic transaction na nangyari. Nagigets po ba? Nakukuha po ba?
Yes po.
Yes. Ano pa kaya? Ano pang mga example? Ano pa yung example ng without economic substance? Yes, Nico. Meron po ba?
Sir, wala po.
Wala. Sige po. Okay, magbigay na lang another example ng transaction na wala pang economic substance. Yung pag-issue ng purchase order. When we issue purchase order, wala pa yung economic substance. Kasi nag-issue pa lang ng purchase order yung company. No? So, kailan lang magkakaroon ng economic substance yung transaction ng company sa supplier? Kapag nag-issue na si supplier ng purchase invoice at na-deliver na yung goods papunta kay company. So doon lang magkakaroon ng substance or economic substance yung transaction. Bakit? Kasi doon nagkaroon ng arm's length transaction or exchange transaction. But by mere issuance of purchase order, hindi natin masasabi na may economic transaction na doon kasi si company lang yung nag-issue ng purchase order. What if hindi inaccept ng supplier? 'Di ba? Kasi sabi nila, wala po kaming ganitong mga supplies. So we cannot record the purchase order. Kung tayo yung accountant, hindi natin pwedeng i-accept na paano namin i-record itong purchase order? Wala pa naman tayong na-receive na goods, wala pa naman tayong na-receive na purchase invoice saka delivery receipt. Diba? Na natanggap na natin yung goods mismo. So purchase order is without an economic substance. So therefore, you cannot record it, 'di ba? So kung kayo yung auditor, halimbawa may nakita kayo doon sa financial statement, accounts payable 1 million pesos. Siyempre nung in-audit niyo yung accounts payable na merong 1 million pesos, hiningi niyo yung source document. Tinanong niyo yung client, patingin nga po ng source document na itong 1 million pesos. Parang medyo malaki. Kasi of all the accounts payable, siya lang yung 1 million. The rest, mga 10,000 lang, 20,000, 40,000. So binigay sa inyo yung source document. Nakita nyo purchase order lang. Papayag ba kayo na i-record yon, class? Papayag ba kayo doon na i-record lang yung transaction? No, diba? So hindi nyo hindi kayo papayag. Kaso pinaliwanag niya. Sabi niya, sir kasi po nag-issue kami ng purchase order etong October. November pa daw nila maipo-forward sa amin yung goods. So November lang din mai-issue yung purchase invoice sa delivery receipt. Baka pwede na po yan sa October i-record na namin kasi October naman kami nag-order.
Hindi pa rin po.
Hindi pa rin. Nakukuha po ba? Hindi pa rin kasi walang substance yung purchase order. And then wala pang economic transaction kasi wala pang exchange transaction na nangyayari. Nakukuha po ba? So wala pang exchange transaction doon. So that is correct. So tama po yun. You have to stick to your principles, accounting principles, audit principles. So that is how to become or becoming an auditor. Nakukuha po ba? All right. So another example of fraud, aside from the first two, manipulation, falsification, alteration, saka recording of transactions without economic substance. Anyone? Yes, Sophia.
Sir, possible din po yung misrepresentation or internal omission po dun sa financial statements para maaari po nilang maapektuhan yung transactions or yung records po or documents ng company.
Yes, no? So tama si Sophia. Meron kasi tayong tinatawag na intentional omission. So lumalabas, kasi dito sinabi natin, errors, also known as omissions or mistake. Pero kapag ang omission daw naging intentional, lumalabas hindi na siya error. That is considered as fraud na. Dahil intentional yung omission. Nakukuha po ba, class?
Yes po, sir.
Alright.
Yes,
So
yes.
remember, kapag error, unintentional. Kapag fraud, intentional. So huwag kayong magpapalito. May nakita kayong omission, pero intentional siya, that is fraud. Any other example of fraudulent financial reporting? Meron pa po ba? Meron pa po ba, class? Yes po. Yes, Nicole. Yes, Nicole.
Yung ano po, intentional parang fraud po when it comes to the accounting policy po.
Yes, no? So intentional application or misapplication of accounting policies. So normally ginagawa yan for good public image or to prepare a good financial statement. Sabihin natin, ang gusto nila sa inventory, ang ilalagay nila is LIFO. Diba? LIFO ang gusto ko. Instead na FIFO, kahit hindi sinasuggest ng accounting standards ang LIFO yung gagamitin namin kasi mas mukhang malaki yung ending inventory. Therefore, maliit yung cost of goods sold. Therefore, mas malaki ang gross profit. Therefore, mas malaki ang net income. So lumalabas, intentional yung misapplication ng accounting policy nila. Kasi gusto nila lumaki yung net income. Pero yung dapat talaga nilang gamitin ay first in, first out method instead of last in, first out method. So dahil may intentional misapplication of accounting policy in the inventory, that can be considered as a fraud. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Opo, sir.
Yes. All right. Now, let's go to another type of fraud. Ano po yung another type of fraud natin? Yes, Salve. Yes, Salve.
Misappropriation of assets po, sir, or also called as employee fraud.
Yes, that's correct, no? Misappropriation of assets, otherwise known as employee fraud. So, kung titignan natin, di ba? Balikan natin si fraudulent financial reporting. Kapag si fraudulent financial reporting, parang ang gumagawa nito ay yung nasa upper level, management. Kaya siya tinatawag as management fraud. While yung misappropriation of assets, nasa lower level siya. Nasa employee level siya. Kaya, tinatawag din siyang employee fraud. So, ano yung mga examples ng employee fraud or misappropriation of assets? Anyone from the class? Yes, Princess. Yes, Princess.
Yung ano sir, pag-create ng bills tsaka ng official receipts po na hindi naman talaga nangyari sa company. Tapos yung gagawin po nila is gagamitin for personal use. So for short po, nagnanakaw po sila ng pera.
Yes, no? So that's correct. So ang tawag doon, embezzling of receipts. Kasi gumagawa sila ng fraudulent act. Kunwari, meron totoong receipts, pero gawa-gawa lang pala nila yung receipts na yun. No? So, that's embezzlement. So, pwede tayo mag-embezzle ng receipts, ng cash, di ba? It could be embezzling of official receipts, cash receipts, yung actual na nakuhang cash, di ba? Or invoices. So these are examples of embezzlement. So kapag nag-embezzle ka, it involves cash. Kasi from a fake document, you obtain something which should not be yours. Hindi pa pwedeng dapat maging sa iyo kasi hindi totoo na legitimate yung transaction na yun. So that's embezzlement. Ano pa po yung mga example ng misappropriation of assets? Anyone from the class? Anyone from the class? Ano pa po mga example? Meron pa po? Yes, John Luis.
So yung ano po, stealing of inventory po.
Stealing of inventory. So that's correct, no? Stealing of entities' assets, company assets. So ano yung mga normal na ini-steal sa company? We have cash, di ba? Supplies, inventory. Di ba? Kasi yung cash is the most liquid form of asset. Siyempre, kapag nakita ng isang employee yung cash nandun lang sa lamesa, walang nakatingin, walang camera, walang CCTV, siyempre kung may opportunity ka na kunin yun, kukunin mo yun. Di ba? Kasi wala namang pipigil. Walang pumipigil. Walang humahadlang. Diba? Lalo na kung walang konsensya yung kukuha. Kukunin niya talaga yun. So, one example of an asset that is normally being stolen in the company's premises is cash. Kasi madali lang siyang ibulsa, madaling ilagay sa bag, di ba? Tapos, pwede mo pang unti-untiin. Lalo na kapag barya. Ano pa mga example? Supplies. Pwedeng mag-steal ng supplies. Halimbawa, sabihin natin, nagtatrabaho na tayo, accountant tayo, tapos meron tayong isang employee na araw-araw humihingi ng ballpen. Sabi niya, sir, pahingi naman po ako ng ballpen. Diyan sa humihingi siya sa purchasing team. Pahingi pa ako ng ballpen. Nawala na yung ballpen ko eh. Kinabukasan, sir, pahingi po ulit ng ballpen. Na-misplace ko. Tapos nung sumunod na araw, sir, pahingi po ulit ng ballpen. Limahin mo na, sir, kasi lagi kong nawawala. Tapos after 5 days, humingi ulit ng ballpen. So, bakit kaya? Kasi pag pinuntahan sa bahay, meron na siyang tindahan ng office supplies. Diba? Kasi yung mga supplies, normally, madali lang siyang mahingi, madali lang siyang makuha, lalo na kapag may opportunity yung employee na kumuha doon sa stock room or sa supplies area. Ano pa? Inventory. Madali rin siyang makuha. So, tingnan natin. One good example sa bahay. Di ba yung iba sa atin meron tindahan. May tindahan si nanay. So, sino yung may tindahan dito sa bahay? Si Luella, no? May tindahan po ba kay Luella? And then si Christine. O, diba?
Meron po.
Yes, di ba? May tindahan. Sabihin natin na maliliit pa tayo kapag nagugutom tayo. Gusto natin kumain ng chichirya. Kumukuha ba tayo?
Opo, sir. Pero nagpapaalam po.
Ang bait naman. Ang bait naman, nagpapaalam. So, yes, no? Kahit paano, nagpapaalam pa rin. Pero kapag sa company minsan, lalo na kapag mahal yung inventory, minsan kinukuha yun ng ibang employee. Lalo na, one good example, meron akong client, Korean company siya. Korean store. No? So, malaking store siya. Ang appearance nila, kasi online store siya. Parang mall. Korean mall siya. Ngayon, meron doon, syempre may mga employee doon na mahilig sa K-pop, mahilig sa mga Koreans, sa Korean products. So, syempre, kung nakikita nila yung mga Korean products to, tas ang mamahal, sinasabi nila, ang mahal naman nito. Syempre, kung gusto nilang makatikim ng noodles na mahal galing Korea, pwede silang kumuha. Lalo na kung may opportunity. 'Diba? Kung may pagkakataon, yun pala sa Tagalog, kung may pagkakataon na makakuha, kukunin nila. Lalo na kung wala ring control measures. Naka-open lang siya, nandun sa stock room, pwede kang kumuha, 'di ba? Kahit bawal, pwede talagang kunin. So ito yung mga normal examples ng company assets na pwedeng kunin. Cash, supplies, inventory. Pwede bang kunin yung truck? Halimbawa, ikaw, janitor ka, pwede mo bang kunin yung truck? Yung kapag sa construction company, may isang janitor, pwede ba niyang kunin yun? Makukuha ba niya? Mabubulsa ba niya yun?
Hindi po.
Mahirap po.
Mahirap, di ba? Sa kapag inilabas niya yun, dala-dala niya yung truck, nakasakay siya doon, sabihin ng guard, para saan niya? Bakit dala-dala mo yung truck ng company? Ay wala, hindi isipin niyo na lang hindi niyo nakikita. Hindi niyo pwedeng sabihin na gano'n. Diba? Unlike yung mga maliliit na bagay, pwedeng madaling itago. Yung barya, ilagay sa loob ng sapatos, yung ibang supplies, 'di ba? Ilagay sa loob ng damit. Kunwari mukhang mataba yung yung tao kasi nandoon pala yung mga supplies sa loob ng damit. So yan yung mga example ng misappropriation of asset. Ano pa kayong ibang example ng misappropriation of asset class? Meron pa po ba? Yes, Gab. Yes, Gab.
Sir, yung lapping po of accounts receivable.
Yes, no? So tama po yan, lapping of accounts receivable. Pero iibahin ko siya. Sabihin ko kiting. Meron kasi tayong tatlong klase ng kiting. Kiting, so kiting through, yan, through lapping. So kiting through lapping, kiting through fund transfer, and then kiting through window dressing. So yan. So this examples of kiting can be considered as an employee fraud. So ano yung normally subject to lapping? Anong account?
AR po.
Accounts
receivable.
Diba? So anong ginagawa sa lapping para magkaroon ng lapping sa accounts receivable? Halimbawa, ang cashier. Yung cashier, nakuha niya yung nakakolekta siya ng ng payment kay customer A na meron siyang accounts receivable. So sabihin natin, nabayaran na ni customer A yung 20,000 pesos na receivable niya. So anong mangyayari? Kukunin ni cashier yung pera na 20,000 pesos. Itatago niya, sasabihin niya, ay akin na lang to, hindi ko naman niresibuhan si customer A kasi hindi naman siya humingi ng resibo. So akin na to. Ngayon, syempre, matitrace pa rin yun. Matitrace yung records. Kasi iba yung nagre-record ng payment, iba yung nakatanggap. So anong gagawin? Kapag nagbayad yung ibang customer, sabihin natin si customer B, nagbayad si customer B, nagkataon 20,000 din. Ang gagawin ni cashier, i-apply niya muna doon kay customer A as if bayad yun ni customer A. Pero kinuha niya na nung una yung bayad ni customer A, inangkin niya na lang. So ang ginawa niya, nagkaroon ng lapping. Imbis na i-apply directly yung payment ni customer B sa account ni customer B, in-apply niya muna yon doon kay customer A. As if payment ni customer A. So ngayon, naghihintay naman siya ng payment sa ibang customer para mai-apply naman niya kay customer B. So yun yung lapping. So parang hinihila niya yung payment ng isang customer or isang client papunta sa account ng isang client. So, di ba lap, di ba? So ganun yun. Yan. So, kiting through fund transfer. Ano naman yung kiting through fund transfer? Yung kiting through fund transfer naman, ito naman yung kumuha siya ng pera sa isang account or sa isang cash account or bank account, pero para matakpan yung or makonceal yung pagkukuha niya ng pera, magfa-fund transfer siya from one bank account to another bank account. Para kapag tinignan na, nag-conduct ng investigation, intact pa rin yung pera, kumpleto. Nagigets po ba? Nakukuha po ba? So that is kiting through fund transfer. So, pinapalipat-lipat niya yung pera para hindi makita or maitago yung nawawalang pera. So ganun din. One example, yung sa petty cash fund. Sabihin natin, dalawa yung petty cash fund na hawak ni petty cash custodian. So anong meron doon? Si petty cash custodian, kinuha niya yung yung pera. Kumuha siya ng pera doon. Pero nagkataon, in-audit na nung auditor. Kayo yung auditor. I-audit nyo na yung isang petty cash fund. So anong nangyari? Kukuha muna siya ng fund doon sa isang petty cash fund, itatapal niya muna sa isang petty cash fund. Para kapag nag-conduct na kayo ng petty cash count, makikita nyo kompleto yung petty cash sa isang petty cash fund. Nakakasunod po ba, class?
Yes po.
Yes po,
Yes
sir.
po.
Yes po. Alright, di ba? So, ngayon, kapag magkakandak naman kayo ng petty cash count sa isang petty cash fund, ang gagawin niya, kukunin niya na yung inilagay niya doong pera, ibabalik niya doon sa isang petty cash fund para magmukhang puno din yung petty cash fund or kompleto. So, yun naman yung parang fund transfer din. Pero manual. Hindi na siya fund transfer na online fund transfer ng bank. Di ba? And then last one is kiting through window dressing. So tulad nung sinabi kanina, yung sa isa, window dressing ng financial statement. Ito naman, window dressing on an employee level. So normally, yung mga window dress dito, inventory, cash, supplies. So yan yung mga window dress. Alright, so these are examples of fraud. Management fraud, employee fraud. Alternative name ng management fraud, fraudulent financial reporting, employee fraud, misappropriation of assets. So, i-discuss ulit natin dito yung fraud. Balikan natin yung fraud. Yung fraud, since mga accountants kayo, hindi kayo nagsisettle for less. Diba? Hindi lang kayo dyan hindi kayo convinced. Hindi kayo convinced dito sa fraudulent financial reporting ay management fraud. Misappropriation of assets, employee fraud. Yung gusto nyo, i-dissect nyo pa siya, i-breakdown nyo pa siya. So, pwede nating i-breakdown ito. Yung fraud kasi, pwede siyang may sub-classification pa. No? So, sub-classification of fraud. So, fraud came from two sources. First one is according to the perpetrator. Pag sinabing perpetrator, sino yung nag-commit ng fraud? Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po.
Alright. So according to the perpetrator, sino yung nag-commit ng fraud? So the first one is what we call management fraud. If it's the management who commits the fraud. The second one is employee fraud. So if it's the employee who commit the fraud. So yan yung according to the perpetrator. Second one is according to the subject matter. So kung sino yung kung ano yung subject matter ng fraud. Siyempre, kung ang subject matter ng fraud, yung ginawa ng fraud is the financial statement, then that is what we call fraudulent financial reporting. So lagyan natin ito, fraudulent financial reporting. And then, ano pa? Kapag ang subject matter is yung misappropriation ng assets, yung asset mismo, then it could be misappropriation of assets. So misappropriation of asset yung tawag mo. Ayan. So napaghiwalay pa natin sila. Misappropriation of assets. So these are the two sources of fraud according to perpetrator and according to subject matter. So hindi lang tayo nagsettle dito na kapag fraudulent financial reporting yan, management fraud din yung tawag dyan. Kapag misappropriation of assets, employee fraud din yan. Kasi yan yung nakasulat sa libro. Pero dahil mga accountants tayo, auditor tayo, hiniwalay pa natin according to perpetrator and then according to the subject matter. So, nagigets po ba? Naiintindihan po ba, class?
Opo, sir.
Alright.
Yes,
Now,
Yes,
now before we go with the last sources of misstatement, let's discuss ano ba yung meron sa fraud? How can a fraud exist? So, paano daw magi-exist ang fraud? Fraud exists because there is an existence of a fraud triangle. So may fraud triangle na nag-i-exist. So for us to identify if the transaction is fraudulent, dapat mayroong existence ng tatlong elements, what we call fraud triangle. So ano-ano yung mga element sa fraud triangle? So ano yung first element sa fraud triangle? Anyone from the class? Anyone from the class? Ano kaya yung fraud triangle? Ano yung first element na meron sa fraud triangle? Meron po ba? Can you still hear me? If you can hear me, please press number 3. Please press number 3. Alright, so nakikinig pa rin naman lahat, no? Alright, class. So thank you for still listening. Okay, so ano kaya yung first element ng fraud triangle? Ano kaya meron doon sa fraud triangle para masasabi natin merong fraud? Yes, una muna si Nicole. Yes, Nicole.
Opportunity po.
Opportunity, no? So there is an existence of fraud kasi merong opportunity, no? May opportunity na kunin ang isang bagay, 'di ba? So ano ba yung another term for opportunity para mas maintindihan natin? For example, hindi ko alam yung opportunity. Ano kaya yung opportunity? Alternative name. Yes, Nico.
Chance po.
Yes, no? So, chance. So, lumalabas, ang opportunity pala is parang pagkakataon, chance nung isang perpetrator, diba? To commit the fraud. So, that is the first element in a fraud triangle. Ano naman yung second element in a fraud triangle? Yes, Alina. Alina May. Yes, Alina May.
Incentive po.
Incentive. No? So meron dapat incentive. All right. So that is correct, no? Dapat merong incentive. So yung incentives also known as, ano po yung incentive? Also known as pressure. Diba? Pressure or incentives. So merong pressure or incentives tayong makukuha. Because there is an incentive, there is an existence of pressure. So, yung pressure na yon, it could came from friends, di ba? May motive, dahil nga may incentive, merong pressure doon. So, sabihin natin, one good example is yung mga kabataan. Di ba may mga kabataan na sa gabi lumalabas tapos mag-spray paint. Mag-spray paint sila sa mga stores, yung mga saradong stores, mga nakasarado na mag-spray paint sila doon. Sabi nung isang kaibigan, o sige, para pumasok ka sa aming gang, sa aming fraternity, mag-spray paint ka dyan sa tindahan na yan. Bundok, 2 bundok, tapos sunrise with clouds. Tapos merong mga lumilipad na ibon. Tapos sa baba, mag-drawing ka ng bahay kubo, saka palayat. So gamitin mo tong spray paint na kulay orange, kulay green, kulay pink, saka kulay yellow. So syempre ikaw na kabataan, gusto mo sumali sa gang nila, 'di ba? Gusto mo sumali sa gang. Kaya ginawa mo 'yun. Because bakit mo ginawa 'yon? Because there is a class? Ano meron?
Motive.
There is a motive. There is a pressure. There is a incentive. There is an incentive pala. Diba? Yun. And paano? May pressure nga siya. Perong incentive. May motive ka nga. Diba? Pero nakabukas yung tindahan. Gagawin mo ba?
Hindi po.
Hindi. Kasi walang isang existence ng element. Opportunity. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba? So dapat tatlo yun. So walang opportunity. Pero pag nakasarado, pwede bang gawin?
Pwede po.
Pwede po. Kasi merong chance, merong opportunity. So nakukuha po. Alright. So the last element, ano kayang last element? Is it fire, water, earth? What? Ano po? Yes, sige po. Si Sofia naman. Yes, Sofia.
Sir, the rationalization of the act po.
Yes,
Yung
di ba?
rationalization of the act.
That's correct, no? Rationalization of the act. So, ano naman yung rationalization? Anyone from the class, sabihin natin hindi ko alam yung rationalization. Baka pwede niyong ipaintindi sa akin. Ano ba yung rationalization? Medyo malalim yung English. Anyone from the class? Yes, Kim. Kimberly.
Ito po yung justification ng individual sa pag-commit po ng fraud.
Yes, no? So, yun yung justification niya, basis niya ah, para makomit yung fraud. 'Di ba? Iniisip niya, gagawin ko to kasi gusto kong maka-join talaga. Gusto kong maka-join sa gang nila. 'Di ba? Anong name ng gang nila? Tigang, 'di ba? So, gusto niya sumali sa gang ng mga iba niyang friends. So, because of these three elements in the fraud triangle, pwedeng magawa yung fraud. Magkakaroon ng existence ng fraud. So tayo bilang mga auditor, na-check na natin, ay may fraud triangle nga. 'Di ba? May fraud triangle. May isa pa tayong titignan sa fraud. Meron tayong tinatawag na fraud risk factors. So itong mga fraud risk factors na yon, chine-check din natin yon. Nakita na natin, okay, may fraud. Pero ano yung mga fraud risk factors? So, ayan. So, hinahanap din natin yon bilang external auditor doon sa pag-audit ng financial statement. So, nagigets po ba? Nakukuha po ba, class?
Yes po.
Yes, sir.
Yes po.
Okay. So, last na tayo ha. Last na source ng misstatement. But before that, let's discuss. Ano yung alternative name ng fraud? Kasi error na nabigyan na natin alternative name. Omissions, mistake. Yung fraud, sabihin natin may lumabas na exam. Exam question. Tapos alam natin, ay fraud to eh. Pero bakit walang fraud dito? Ano kaya yung alternative name for fraud? Fraud is also known as irregularities. No? Fraud is also known as irregularities. So, kung wala kayong makita na fraud na word doon sa exam, hanapin niyo yung word na irregularities. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po, sir.
Alright.
Yes
So,
po.
yan po ang first two sources of misstatement. So, let's go on the last part. So, ano yung last source of misstatement? Ano yung pinaka-last source of misstatement? Anyone from the class? Yes, Jennifer. Yes, Jennifer.
Non-compliance with laws and regulation po.
Yes, no? So, non-compliance with laws and regulation. So, that is correct, no? So, tama po yun. So, what do we mean by non-compliance with laws and regulations? Ano kaya yun? Anyone from the class, ano kaya yung non-compliance with laws and regulations? So, can you explain to me what is non-compliance? So, ano ba yung non-compliance? Para mas maintindihan ng lahat. Ano yung non-compliance? Yes. Yes, Ga.
Sir, in simple terms po, ito yung non-compliance is yung failure or yung refusal to comply with something. Like, to be more specific, yung rules or regulation po.
Yes, no? So, hindi siya nakakomply with the rules and regulations. So, that is correct. So, kung titignan natin, di ba meron ako mga estudyante dito. I'm not sure kung may mga students ako dito na students ko ng operations audit. So, meron po ba akong mga students dito ng operations audit before?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po, sir.
Ayan.
Yes,
Alright.
sir.
So, may mga students pala ako. Alright. So, noon kasi, nung sa operations audit, na-discuss ko yung isang uri ng risk in an operational audit. Diba? So, meron tayong tinatawag na compliance risk. No? So, pag sinabing compliance risk, this is the risk from being non-compliant. So, pwede natin siyang ihalin tulad or ilagay dito, i-compare dito sa non-compliance. 'Di ba? Kasi it is a source of material misstatement or misstatement lang in general, yung non-compliance. So, therefore, dahil non-compliant ang company, it is subject to possible compliance risk. No? So, ano yung mga example ng non-compliance with government rules and regulations or existing laws and regulations? Ano yung example, no? Yes, John Harold.
Pwede po sa non-compliance yung yung violations po ng environmental protection laws po.
Yes, no? So violation of environmental protection laws. So for example, Clean Air Act, meron tayong Clean Air Act. So ano na yung mga companies na subject to compliance to Clean Air Act? 'Di ba? Meron tayong factories, 'di ba? Yung factories kasi kailangan nila yan maging compliant with the Clean Air Act. 'Di ba naglalabas sila ng mga usok? Yung lalo na yung mga factory na merong heating process. So naglalabas sila ng usok. Yung transportation companies like bus, jeepneys, naglalabas din sila ng usok kasi yung makina nila it undergoes or undergone the process of combustion. Nagkakaroon ng combustion doon sa engine. So may lumalabas na byproduct which is carbon dioxide. And then yung mga car dealer, 'di ba? Car dealers na companies. Kasi yung binebenta nila, kailangan dapat nakapasa sa emission testing. So these companies, they must follow an existing law which is Clean Air Act. Otherwise, kapag hindi sila sumunod, magbabayad sila ng penalty. Malaking penalty. So that is one good example. Ano pa yung mga example ng environmental protection laws? Meron pa po ba? Yes, Erica. Example ng environmental protection laws muna tayo. Ano kaya yun? Meron po ba?
Sorry, sir, napindot ko po.
Sige po. Sige, sabihin ko na lang. Mining companies. Yung mga mining companies, kailangan sumunod sila with the Mining Act. Diba? So, existing mining act that we have here in the Philippines. Kailangan maging responsible mining company sila. Kapag sinira nila yung isang bundok, kailangan i-rehabilitate nila. Kailangan maging okay pa rin siya after exploration. Kasi, ayun nga, tulad ng nakikwento ko doon sa mga students ko nung nasa operations audit, pati yung sa auditing problems before. Kinento ko sa kanila na I've been working with a mining company before, so doon sa Palawan. So I've seen and witnessed na isang bundok doon nasira, napatag, as in yung buong bundok completely nawala siya. So doon yan sa part ng Rio Tuba. So doon sa Rio Tuba, nawala, as in nag-grade na level yung buong bundok. So, nakakalungkot, 'di ba? So, syempre, kahit meron silang sinusunod na batas, parang hindi pa rin maganda. And for me, I don't want to be connected with a mining company na sumisira ng kalikasan. Diba? Although meron silang social development and management plan, tapos sumusunod sila doon sa PCSD, Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. So lagi sila nakikipag-coordinate doon. Kaso nakakalungkot lang talaga. But although meron namang positive impact, nakaka-create ng more jobs, nagbigay ng mga pabahay doon sa indigenous people. So yun naman. Although, syempre, we have to weigh the pros and cons. So, yan. So, syempre, these mining companies, if they will not follow being or becoming a responsible miner, masasubject sila to heavy penalties. So, yun. Ano pa yung mga ibang example naman ng non-compliance? Yes, Shinali.
Yung tax evasion po, sir.
Yes, no? So that's correct. Tax evasion. So filing of understated taxes. 'Di ba meron na tayong tax ngayon? May income tax na ba kayo? Class?
Yes
Income
po,
taxation.
sir.
Meron.
Yes po.
Income taxation. So kapag nagbayad tayo ng tax, understated tax, uh, considered yun as tax evasion. Nakukuha po ba? Okay. So, one trivia class. No person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of taxes. No person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of taxes. True or false?
True po, sir.
True.
No person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of taxes. So your answer, true or false, you can put it in our chat box. So no person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of taxes. True or false? So maraming false, merong true, 'di ba, no? False, true, false, 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 false. So the correct answer is false. The correct answer is false. Bakit? Although nakasulat siya sa Philippine Constitution natin, doon sa ating constitutional limitation na no person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of taxes. Pero ininterpret na yan ng Supreme Court. So meron ng jurisprudence diyan. Ang sinabi ng Supreme Court, hindi yan yung taxes at all. It is the non-payment of poll tax. No? So kapag sinabi ng problem or sinabi ng question, no person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of poll tax, your answer there is true. Kasi okay lang kahit hindi ka magbayad ng poll tax or community tax. Pero kapag sinabi ng problem, no person shall be imprisoned for the non-payment of taxes, your answer is false. Kasi required tayo magbayad ng taxes as long as kumikita tayo, meron tayong business. So your answer there is false. So yun yung difference nun. Kapag may poll taxes, answer is true. Kapag taxes lang, answer is false. Nakukuha po ba, class?
Yes po.
Yes. All right. Another question. No person shall be imprisoned for the underpayment of poll taxes. No person shall be imprisoned for the underpayment of poll taxes. True or false? What's your answer? True or false? What's your answer? All right. So puro true, no? All right, no? So the answer there is false. Ang sagot doon false. Kasi ano bang sabi ng sentence? No person shall be imprisoned for the underpayment of poll taxes. So anong ginawa niya? Nagbayad siya ng poll taxes pero underpayment. Therefore, nakakommit siya ng tax evasion. So answer there is false. Mas okay na hindi na siya nagbayad ng community tax kaysa magbayad siya ng community tax pero underpayment. So tax evasion po yun. So answer there is false. All right. So pero nangyayari yan kasi yung iba kukuha ng community tax pero sasabihin dun sa munisipyo or city hall ay wala po kaming trabaho kaya maliit lang yung babayaran. But that is considered as a tax evasion. All right. So nagigets po ba? So you have to be fully aware kung paano kinonstruct yung isang exam item. So yun po yan. Ganun po yan, class. Okay. Alright. So let's go back sa ating discussion. Ano pa yung ibang example ng non-compliance? Anyone from the class? Yes, Chelly.
Sir, inside trading of securities po.
Yes, no? Inside trading of securities. So, ano ba yung inside trading of securities? Bakit siya pinagbawal? Anyone from the class? Ano yun? Kasi syempre, okay na, nag-gets ko na, inside trading of securities. Pero ano yung inside trading? Ano yung inside trading, class? So, kailangan maintindihan natin. So, yes, Erica.
Sir, try ko lang po.
Yes po.
Ito po yung halimbawa, yung CEO po, bumili po siya ng stocks base po dun sa information na hindi pa naman po publicly available.
All right. Yes, so that's correct, no? So tama din 'yun. All right. So tama po 'yun. However, so bigyan natin siya ng mas expanded explanation. So paano natin masasabi na merong inside trading? So may inside trading kapag ano ba yung normal? Sorry, doon muna tayo. Ano yung normal na trading ng security? So una, kay issuer, 'di ba? Si issuer mag-i-issue ng certificates. Pag nag-issue ng certificates, merong broker, no? So mga securities broker. Tapos ibebenta nila, si broker ang magbebenta sa buyer of securities. So that means to say, merong detailed transaction, hindi dumediretso si issuer papunta sa buyer of securities, or merong normal transaction na ito yung normal transaction talaga. So si issuer mag-i-issue ng securities pero hindi ibebenta directly sa buyer, merong broker na magbebenta. So normally binebenta yan sa stock market. Tapos si broker ang nasa gitna. Ayan. So this is the usual type of trading of securities. Ano yung inside trading naman? So ang inside trading lumalabas employee of a company, siya din yung buyer ng securities at a lower price. So this employee pala, not employer. So this employee could be a director, di ba? It could be a director or CEO of said company. So bumili siya ng securities at a lower price. So anong gagawin niya? Bumili siya ng securities at a lower price pero ang ginawa niya ay yan. So lagay ko muna dito. Ayan. Alright. So bumili siya at a lower price si employee. Tapos ang ginawa niya, ibinenta niya yon sa legitimate buyer at a higher price. So lumalabas, kumita ang employee sa pagbenta ng shares na previously binili niya at a lower price, tapos binenta niya sa legitimate buyer at a higher price. So ayan ay merong profitable transaction. Kasi si employee, which has a position in the company, buys the shares at a lower price. Tapos ibinenta niya sa legitimate buyer at a higher price. So etong employee na to or director or CEO, hindi siya normally yung pinakamay-ari. Appointed siya as director or CEO, pero hindi siya yung pinakamay-ari. So ang ginawa niya, para kumita siya doon sa pagbebenta ng shares or pag-acquire niya ng shares, ibebenta niya sa legitimate buyer talaga or legitimate investor na mas mataas ang halaga. So that is considered as inside trading. So itong inside trading na to, nangyari ito sa Philippines noong year 2000. Mga year 2000 hanggang 2002. So sino nakakommit nito ng inside trading na to? So anyone, meron po ba, aware po ba kayo sa ganito? Anyone from the class? May idea po ba kayo? So kailan po ba kayo pinanganak, class?
1999.
1999 to 2000. Okay. 1999 to 2000. So, syempre maliliit pa kayo. Alright, so ikikwento ko na sa inyo. So, nung time ni President Erap, President Erap, yung nakakommit netong inside trading. So, anong ginawa nila? Bumibili sila ng mga shares of stocks. So, yung shares of stocks na yung ginamit naman nila. Although hindi sila employee, ginamit nila yung influensya nila para bumili ng mga shares of stocks at a lower price. No? So, bumabagsak yung presyo ng stocks. Ang gagawin nila, bibilhin nila yon kasi ginamit nila yung impluensya nila. Kapag tumaas na ulit yung stocks, ibebenta nila sa legitimate buyer at a higher price. So, ganun ang ginawa nila. And with that, doon sila nakasuhan. Doon nakasuhan si President Erap ng plunder. So, kaya siya sinabihan na plunderer. Kasi ginagamit niya yung position niya to have a gain. Diba? Para magkaroon ng gain for trading of securities. And because of that, nagkaroon ng bagong batas. Ang tawag doon, Securities Regulation Code, kung saan pinagbabawal ng Securities Regulation Code ang inside trading. So, pinagbabawal ng insider trading. Ayan, so lagay ko dyan, insider trading. So, this inside trading of securities is pinagbabawal dito sa Pilipinas. Can you, nagigets po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po.
All right. So
Yes po.
last example is violation of labor laws. So, syempre, yung mga labor-intensive companies like construction companies, coal mining, restaurants, marami silang laborers or employees. Syempre, itong mga employees na to, minsan hindi sila nababayaran ng tama, pinag-overtime pero walang overtime pay, pumapasok ng holiday pero walang holiday pay. So, syempre, meron tayong existing labor laws, tapos nandiyan pa si DOLE para i-monitor yung mga companies na hindi nagbabayad ng tama. Ngayon, kapag ang company hindi nagbabayad ng tama, subject yan to heavy penalties na ini-impose ni DOLE. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? Nakakasunod po ba? All right.
Yes po.
Okay. So these are the three examples or three sources of misstatements. We have errors, fraud, non-compliance. Ano yung another term ng errors? Omission, mistakes. Pag fraud, irregularities. And then kapag non-compliance, ano yung another term ng non-compliance? Also known as violations or illegal acts. So, ayan po yung alternative name ng non-compliance. Nakukuha po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes
Alright.
po.
So, last na lang, class. Last na lang. Ayan. So, dito, let's go here. Sources of misstatements. Ang sources of misstatements, di ba meron tayo? Error, fraud, non-compliance. Itong errors, fraud, and non-compliance, meron kasing responsibility dito si management saka si auditor. So meron tayong tinatawag na auditor's responsibility saka management's responsibility. So ano yung responsibility ni management pagdating sa errors and fraud? Ano yung responsibility ni management pagdating sa errors and fraud? Error muna, sa error. Anong responsibility ni management sa error? Anyone? Meron po ba? Ang responsibility ni management for error is to prevent and detect errors. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba?
Opo, sir.
Alright.
Yes,
Ano naman ang responsibility ni auditor sa error? Yes, Ga.
Sir, to obtain reasonable assurance po that the financial statement is free from material misstatements that whether caused po by error.
Yes, no? So, ang responsibility ni auditor is to check if there are errors. Tama? So, magde-design siya. Magde-design si auditor ng audit procedure para ma-detect yung error. So, yun po yun. So, the auditor's responsibility is to design an audit plan and to assess the risk to detect error. So meron palang responsibility si error to detect the error. Kasi magde-design siya, di ba? Design an audit plan and assess the risk to detect the error. So, yan po ang responsibility ni auditor. Sa fraud naman, anong responsibility ni management sa fraud? Anyone from the class? Anong responsibility ni management sa fraud? Alright, so wala akong sasagot. Sige, sasagutin ko na. Yes po, yes Erica. Yes,
To
Erica.
control the policies and procedures po.
To control the policies and procedures, which is correct naman, no? To control the policies and procedures kasi their responsibility is to prevent and detect fraud. Diba? Gagawa sila ng policies and procedures to prevent and detect fraud. Yun yung responsibility nila. Ano naman yung responsibility ni auditor? Ano responsibility ni auditor? Anyone from the class? Yes, Erica.
To ensure the integrity of an entity's accounting and financial reporting systems po.
To ensure the integrity. To ensure the integrity of the company or entity's accounting and internal control system. Diba? Pero, diba, i-check natin. Ano talaga yung pinaka-responsibility doon ni auditor? Kasi chine-check niya nga yung integrity. Diba? Bakit niya chine-check yung integrity? Bakit niya chine-check yung integrity? Anyone from the class? Yes, Harold. Yes, Harold. John Harold.
Chinecheck niya po yung integrity para ma-assess din po yung kung yung financial statements po ay free from misstatements din po.
As a result of fraud, no? So therefore, the responsibility of the auditor is to assess the risk to detect fraud. Yan. So makikita nyo, ang responsibility ni management is to prevent and detect errors, prevent and detect fraud. Pero kay auditor, anong responsibility lang niya? Detect the errors by designing an audit plan, detect the fraud by assessing the risk pertaining to fraud. Ano yung makikita doon? Kailangan may existence ng fraud. Ulitin ko. Ayan. Existence ng fraud risk factors. So, dapat merong fraud risk factors na makita si auditor. Or merong existence din ng fraud triangle, di ba? So, yan po yung chine-check ni auditor. For non-compliance, anong responsibility ni management? For non-compliance, same din. Prevention and detection of illegal acts. Ano yung responsibility ni auditor sa non-compliance? Ano ang responsibility ni auditor sa non-compliance? Yes, Nicole. Yes, Nicole.
To detect po whether meron pong hindi po parang compliance po sa laws and regulation po.
Yes, no? So, ang responsibility ni auditor is to assess compliance risk to detect illegal acts. Although, for clarification, ang sabi ng auditing standards, hindi daw ine-expect. So, auditors, yan. So, lagyan natin ng color. Auditors are not expected to detect fraud. Ayan. So, auditors are, not fraud, detect non-compliance. So, yun yung sinasabi ng auditing standard natin. Auditors are not expected to detect non-compliance. However, hindi sinabi ng auditing standards na hindi rin nila responsibility. Hindi nila responsibility yung pag-detect ng non-compliance. Diba? Walang sinabing ganon. So therefore, responsibility yun ni auditor. Responsibility niya to detect non-compliance. Although they are not expected to detect. Kasi syempre mahirap yung non-compliance. Kailangan meron talagang visible evidence na masasabing non-compliant ang isang company. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po, sir.
Yes po.
So this will end. So we are going to end our class discussion here. So i-upload ko po itong ating videos. Then hindi na wala na tayong time to discuss auditing problem. So probably next meeting we'll discuss the auditing problem and upload ko rin yung video, yung first video natin for auditing problem. All right, class. So happy weekend. Class dismissed. Bye-bye.
Goodbye po. Thank you po.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you, sir.